Daf Nun Vav Amid Aleph, 6 lines from the top. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Kol Ir Sheyesh Ba Ma'alos U'Mardos, any city that has, it's not level, when it has Ma'alos U'Mardos, the elevation rises and it now declines. It goes up and down. So therefore, a person who's walking has to exert more effort to climb up, walk up the ascents, and to go down when it on the decline when it descends. So any of that city, Adam Behema, the people and animals in that city, they die in midlife. It takes a toll on them, and they die in midlife, mid-age. In fact, they mean literally that they die. It means that they get old early, that they already are aging quicker because of the effort that's exerted, so therefore in middle age already they appear as old people. Amar Rav Huna Braid Rav Yeshua Hani Maliaisa the Beibir the Bein Narish Askanan. He says the steep roads between Biri and Narish, they cause me to age prematurely. So we learned that if a city is round, it has to be squared off. You square it off and you measure the tchum, the alpaimam in each direction from the straight lines, so that way you gain the corners. So when you square it off, when you draw the lines, you square it off, you draw the lines aligned with the directions of the world. You draw the northern line in the north direction, across the north, and the south to the south. So you draw the lines, the straight lines across the northern line, the east, the south, and the west. And to determine how do you know which is north and which is south. So you have the simonim in the zodiac, the egla, the calf, which was referred to nowadays as Taurus, that's in the north. The akrav and Scorpio, the scorpion, is in the south. Rav Yesi says, if you're not familiar with that and to determine where they are, where these signs are, if you don't know how to square it off with Riboy Shaloilam, Merava Kimin Hatkufa, you draw the square according to the seasons, meaning when you see the seasons and you see where the sun rises and the sun sets in the different seasons, you'll be able to determine what is north and what is south, what is east and what is west. How is that? In the longest days of the year, in the summer, in the longest days, so the sun, the cycle of the sun, we see the sun, it stretches along most of the horizon longer than any other time of the year. So that point, Gemara's holding at this point right now, is that when the sun rises, it rises in the east, but in that longest day of the year, in the summer, the sun rises in the northeast corner. So that corner, that's a point of the northeast. And then it has the whole rotation, and it travels along on the east and the south and the west, and it sets on the corner of the northwest. So therefore, you have the 2 points. You have the northeast and the northwest. It rises in the northeast, it sets in the northwest. Therefore, you can determine what the line of the north is. It's between those 2 points. That's the line of the north. So Zeh Pnei Tzafon. Chama Yaitza B'Yam Kotzer V'Shekas B'Yam Kotzer Zeh Pnei Doram. Now in the winter time, it's the shortest. In the shortest day of the winter, it travels on the shortest distance. It rises in the east, but it's in the southeast, and it sets in the southwest. So you have the 2 points of the south. So you know where the south line is. So therefore, you can determine where the 2 ends are, the north and the south, and then you can connect the square because you have those 2 lines. Tkufas Nisan and Tkufas Tishrei, and it happens to be in the spring, and in the Tishrei, and the equinox of Tishrei, that Chama Yetzer B'Chatzi Mizrach, it rises in the midpoint. It's in the east, midpoint between north and south. B'Shekas B'Chatzi Marav, and it sets in the midpoint on the west between north and south. Shenemar, we see that from the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Hoylech al Doram v'Soiviv al Tzofin." It says that it's hoylech el dorim. When you use the terminology of hoylech, that means the time in the daytime when we see visibly the traveling of the sun and the route that it takes when it's visible. And Saivev, that term refers to when in the nighttime, when we don't see the direction of the sun. So it says, Hoylech el Daram, v'Saivev el Sofen. It says, Hoylech el Daram, and the Daram, and you always see the sun always, except when the clouds conceal it, but it's always visible, the direction of the sun and the route it takes is always visible in the south. No matter what, in the summer, or even in the shortest days of the winter, the sun is always visible on the southern horizon. The north, it's never visible. You never see the sun in the north. Even on the longest days of the summer, the sun travels along east and south and west, but you don't see it on the north. So it's Hoylech al Dorim, v'Saivev el Sofen. Hoylech al Dorim b'yayim. It's Hoylech al Dorim, that's in the daytime, v'Saivev el Sofen b'layla. And in the nighttime, that's when it travels that route on the north. It's a nighttime and you don't see it. Saivev, Hoylech HaRuach. Then it says Saivev, Hoylech. It's both Saivev and Hoylech. El p'nei mizrach p'nei mara, pam mahalachtan. That's east and west, which sometimes the sun is visible, sometimes it's there in the daytime, sometimes at night, and therefore depending on the season. So there it varies. The north and the south does not vary in seasons. It's always visible in the south and never in the north. And the east and west, it depends on the seasons. Amr Mishashi says, no, that's not true. Lesson lahana klali. This is not true. This is not accurate. Why? The Sunny, we learned in the Brisa that lo yotza chama mi'olam mekar mizrach tzvainis. The sun never rose in the corner in the northeast corner. It never got stretched to that extent where it mamish rises in the corner. It's closer in the summertime. It's closer to the north. In the wintertime, it rises closer to the south, but it never actually, not in the summer, it doesn't rise from the northeast corner, and in the winter, it's not mamish on the southeast corner. So it never rose mikar mizrach tzvainis v'shakab kar marav tzvainis. V'loit also chama mikar mizrach tzvainis. And it never rose even in the winter, it never rose in the southeast. And it never set in the southwest, and never hit the corners. Yes, it's true that in the summer it rises closer to the north, but it never rises mamish in the northeast corner. And it's true that in the summer it sets closer to the north, but it never sets in the northwest corner, mamish in the corner. It comes closer to the north, but it's still in the west. And in the winter, yes, it rises closer to the south, but not mamish in the corner, and it sets in the south, closer to the south and the west, but not mamish on the southwest corner. So these are not accurate, and you cannot determine it through these means. So continuing on, the Gemara with the discussion of astrology. So we know that the year is 365 days and 6 hours roughly. It's 365 days and 6 hours. If you divide that into seasons, into 4 seasons, that for each season is 91 days and 7.5 hours. So 365 and 6 hours divided by 4 is 91 and 7.5 hours. So therefore, you'll have the following cycle, the following occurrence. So Omer Shmuel says, "Ain't Kufas Nisan Neifeles." Now, with the Kufas Nisan, it says the spring equinox. So the spring equinox will land out at fixed points throughout the day, either at the beginning of the day or midday, or the end of the day or midnight. So that's when the spring equinox starts. So he says, "Ain't kufas nisan neifeles ela barba rive hayom," the 4 quarter points of the day. Oy betchilas hayom, either the beginning of the day, or betchilas halayla, oy bechatzi hayom, oy bechatzi halayla. So that's the spring equinox. Ve'aint kufas Tammuz neifeles. Now Tammuz in the summer, so that's 91 days and 7.5 hours later. So therefore, it will, if we talk about during the time of the day, then you have to add on. You have to add on that it's 7.5 hours later. So therefore, it will only fall out. Ain't kuvas tamid eloi ba'achas u'mechsa, oi ba'achas u'mechsa, oi b'shiva u'mechsa, bein b'yom bein b'layla. So therefore, it will fall out either with, now, if the spring equinox started at the beginning of the day, if you add on 7.5 hours, then the summer, the Tammuz equinox, will be 7.5 hours later. That'll be at 1:30 in the afternoon. Shows money is. If the Nisan started off at noon, so that would be 7.5 hours later. It will be 7.5 hours, so it'll be 7:30, 7.5 hours into the day, 7:30. And so therefore, and that's how you always add on 7.5 hours, and then if the spring equinox started at 6 o'clock, so then it would be the Tammuz 7.5 hours later, would be 1:30 in the morning, and so forth, and then it continues like that. Ve'ain't kufas Tishrei, Neifel, not Tishrei, which is again the next season. It's 91 days plus another 7.5 hours. El oila b'sholosh soyes, oy b'tisha shoyes, and then it was either ben b'yom ben b'layla. It will be either 3 hours or 9 hours. So if we said that kufas Tammuz, if it would be at 1.5 hours. So then you add on 7.5 hours, so that is 9. If it's 7.5 hours, if it's 7:30, you're adding on another 7.5 hours. So then it'll be at 3 o'clock. It'll be 3 o'clock if you add on the 7.5 hours to that. Vein kuvas teves nefels, not kuvas teves, which is the next season, the winter season. Again, so you're adding on 91 days and 7.5 hours. Eloi ba'arbo mechsa, oi ba'esra mechsa. It's either 4.5 or 10.5 hours. Bein b'yom, bein b'layla. Because you're adding on 7.5 hours. Like we said to begin with, that's between each season is 91 days and 7.5 hours. And the beginning of one season to the next, doesn't change we're talking about over here that ain't kufa moishechas. We're talking about the mazoles. Ella is a half hour. How is that? So what is it referring to over here? Well, there are stars. We see the mazoles in the sky. Now, what we see, what's visible to us, are the mazoles that seem to move and are in rotation. There are 7 which are visible to us that seem to rotate, and each hour, one of them is considered to be the dominant one. So the siman for the different mazolas are kalash samchan. So that's kaicha, which is Mercury, Levana is the moon, and then the Shapsai is Saturn, Tzedek is Jupiter, Mad is Mars, Chama is the sun, and Neitza is Venus. Those are the mazolas that are visible and appear to move in a cycle, and they seem to move where the other stars seem to be fixed. So they have, each one dominates in another hour. So so when one kuva to the next, since you have either 7.5 hours between the seasons, now there's 7 mazolos. Each one dominates is Michael for an hour. There's 7, and then plus a half hour. So you have a rotation. And then, if you didn't have you didn't have that extra half hour, rather, then from one season to the next, you'd have the same mazel that would be dominant in Nisan would be dominant in Tammuz, because you have 7 hours, which is a complete cycle. So if the mazel which is dominant at the beginning of Nisan, then the next season would be 7 hours later, which is a full cycle of the mazolos, and the same mazel would be dominant at the beginning of the next season. However, you have an extra half hour. So it's Masechet, it extends an extra half hour. Shmuel said that if the Nisan, the spring equinox, falls in the tzedek in the hour of Jupiter. If that happens, you won't find the Kufas Nisan she'ena mishaberes ha'seilonos, that it won't ruin the trees. The trees will get ruined. That is simon that effect will have on the nature and the climate, and the trees will get ruined. And if Tevis falls out in tzedek, then she'ena miyavesh es you won't have it. That if Tevis, if the winter falls out, the kufa falls out on that in Jupiter, then inevitably it will dry out all of the plantings, the seeds. But that's only so that the moon in that month is first seen either in the mazel of the Levana, or in Tzedek, or in Jupiter. Then it'll have that effect, and you can predict that this effect the climate will have on the Zerayim.